Hey friends, welcome to the Artistry of Money. I'm JR, and we're so happy that you decided to join us for this video. And once again, I have two of my favorite people in the world joining me for this discussion. Mr. Todd Vigiletti. Say hi,
Hello.
Todd.
Hi, everybody.
And Miss Karen Michaels. Karen?
Hey.
So today I thought we would take the time to think about, we are recording right now as the Federal Reserve is announcing its decision on interest rates and on tapering its bond purchasing program. And there are a lot of people who are worried about the implications of this. Is it going to crash the stock market? Is it going to crash the real estate market? Is it going to crash the bond market? And those are very real fears. And I thought we would take the time to think about this and talk about it today on today's episode. Sound good?
Sounds like a great idea. All sorts of questions that I have as we see this coming in live before our very eyes. So this should be a good discussion.
One of the things that's happening right now with our economy is financial markets are having a bigger impact on more people's lives than ever before, right? 401ks, but also people have been trading, like day trading, and people are also having, relying on other investments in the stock market. And it's a greater percentage of people, of the population that's involved. And that if those accounts go down in value substantially, it's going to have, there is this thing called the wealth effect, which means when you feel wealthy, you feel more comfortable buying more things, right? Like buying a car or buying a second house or taking a vacation. And so when the stock market is up, and real estate prices are up, that creates what is called the wealth effect. People just feel more comfortable. And so they go out and they buy a new car, a more expensive car, a new car that, their current car is 3 years old, and God forbid they should drive a 3-year-old car. So they have to buy but they feel more comfortable is the point. And so they really don't want to crash real estate markets or stock markets because the wealth effect will happen in reverse. People will just stop.
Right.
I'm thinking about buying a car. Nope. I'm thinking about taking a cruise. Nope.
Right.
Right.
We were thinking about buying a bigger house, which is, when people buy a house, it's a lot of stuff, right? There's somebody else buying your house, and there's just people redecorate, and there's furniture, and there's carpeting and
one
paint
sale, all that happens.
And so when the economy is strong and things are good, it really helps propel everything. And all this is being propelled right now by these artificially low interest rates. I mean, anybody who has a mortgage and who's been refinancing their mortgages knows how much money they're saving, right? Right. And a lot of people are, this is going for cars and it's also going for houses. People are saying, wow, my house is worth so much now. It's worth $1 million, let's just say. If I could buy this $1.5 million house, oh my God, that's my dream house. And it's only $500,000 more. Let me buy it now. So people are doing that with cars too. They have a 2-year-old BMW and they're saying, oh my God, I always dreamed about the bigger BMW or the bigger Mercedes. And my car is worth the same as I paid for it 2 years ago when it was brand new. So let me sell it and buy a new car and get the car of my dreams. A lot of people are doing that. And that's a lot of economic activity that's very positive for the economy. So there's a lot at risk here with raising interest rates.
So, okay. So what does that mean for what does that mean? I love listening to you talk about this. It's so interesting, but I don't really know what it means to me. Is there something I should do differently? Is there something I should think about? Is there something I should jump into? Is there something I should jump out of? I don't know.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So number one, if you own a home and you have a mortgage on it and you've been thinking about refinancing, I would definitely recommend that you think about doing it sooner rather than later, because as interest rates rise, it may not even be worth refinancing anymore, right? So as it is today, interest rates are very near all-time lows. So I would suggest you refinance, consider strongly refinancing. I mean, you should talk to your tax professional to get advice, but I would definitely recommend that you strongly consider refinancing now rather than waiting, because if interest rates go up, you're not going to get as low an interest rate.
Right.
So you asked a question, how does that affect a lot of people? So a lot of people have been taking money out of their homes, right? They've been either refinancing and refinancing at a higher level, right? Because they can afford a higher level because interest rates are lower. So
Right.
even refinancing and taking an extra $50,000 out of their house, their monthly payment will stay the same because interest rates are lower, right?
Right.
A lot of people have been doing that, and that's been adding a lot of economic activity to the economy. So if interest rates go up, all of that's going to stop. Also, as I talked about the wealth effect, people love looking on Zillow and saying, "Hey, my house gained $25,000 last month. I'm feeling pretty good about my ownership of this house." That's going to go in reverse. You're going to start seeing housing prices, probably, this is my opinion, housing prices are going to start to come down, and people are going to be more nervous and more scared. So if you're thinking about buying a house, that's another thing that you might want to do sooner rather than later, whether it's a second house or you're thinking about moving up to a bigger house or selling your house and retiring into a smaller house. If you're at that point in your life, you might think about doing that now rather than later and waiting, because interest rates are gonna make a big deal. So I don't know if that answers your question, Karen.
Well, I guess yes, that's great to know that. I guess okay, it's saying transitory got a downgrade. So these are comments, by the way, as I'm looking at this federal thing.
Okay, so what they're talking about, whoever wrote that, it's a little obscure, but the Fed has been saying that inflation is transitory, meaning it's temporary, that we have a supply chain that's really global these days, right? If you're a car manufacturer, you're getting components from different parts of the world, different companies all over the world. And these shipping problems and manufacturing problems that have been happening because of COVID, as a direct result of COVID, have been causing inflation. Because when there's a less of a supply, I don't want to get too into the weeds here with you guys, but when there's a lower supply of something, let's talk about computer chips, for example, right? When there's a lower supply of chips because chip manufacturers can't get the raw materials they need to manufacture the chips, or they can't get the people they need to manufacture the chips, or the shipping companies are having problems moving the chips around, all of that leads to higher prices. It's a lower supply of chips. And as I was talking about, people are trying to buy cars and buy homes, and demand for chips has actually been going up because everything, interest rates are so low. So Chairman Powell, chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jay Powell, has been talking about this inflation that we're seeing in the economy as only transitory, meaning temporary, that once people go back to work and once we get all these supply chain barriers unclogged, like it's kind of well known that the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach have been really, really backed up. Right. Whatever the number is, 60 ships have been out in port waiting to be unloaded. We all have heard those stories. Once that's over, right? Once things are running smoothly again, then inflation will go back down because all these supplies will be moving around in the system the way they used to before COVID hit and made things bad. That's what he's been saying. So evidently, I haven't had time. This press release, this announcement by Powell was just made a few minutes ago, so I haven't had a chance to read it yet. But evidently that comment, Karen, that you asked about, somebody is reading that he no longer thinks it's transitory, or is saying the probability of it being transitory is lower than it was the last time he made this statement. So they're saying transitory has been downgraded. I think that's what they mean.
I think it is too, based on these things that I'm looking at. So I asked, so now I go back to, again, what do us regular folk do?
Well, so it means that at least right now, inflation looks like it's sustainable. It's not as temporary. If inflation's temporary, you can just sort of wait it out.
Right.
And so now, if inflation is a little more long-term, you have to think about what's going to happen, because if inflation is a real issue in our economy, interest rates are likely to go up.
Right.
And as I said before, that's likely not super healthy for stock market, bond market, real estate, and also commodities. So number one, prepare for higher prices.
Yeah.
Because they're here to stay. And you may have been thinking, well, I've been buying my gas and it's higher, but it'll go down because Chairman Powell says it's going to go down if you ever read the Wall Street Journal. But maybe that's not true. Maybe higher prices for gas are here to stay, and maybe they're going to go higher yet from where they are. I have no idea. I'm not saying that.
Right.
Sure.
But those are the kinds of things. I mean, if grocery prices are high and they're going to be staying higher, then that's something you need to be aware of, instead of saying, don't worry about it. In 3 months, it'll be back to normal. Everything will be fine. Maybe those prices are going to be more or less permanent.
Right.
So this also has to do with the job market, right? For those of us who have several gigs or gigs that pay hourly, I've heard a lot of anecdotal stories about people now asking for upwards of $20 an hour to work for a non-skilled, no education required job with no experience in that field. I've heard about it in retail. I've heard about it in landscape maintenance. I've heard about it in food. So it seems like there's a possibility that interest rates may go up and inflation may still be around or still be with us.
Right.
So what do you do? I mean, I don't know, Karen. That's a really good question. I mean, I guess you look back to the 70s and look at what people did and try to figure out who the winners were and who the people who were worse off were, and try to figure out what they did. I really don't know. Mm-hmm. Even if you did that, there's no guarantee that what's going to happen today is going to be the same as the 70s. Sure. I mean, if you ask me, that's pretty lazy analysis to say, hey, this happened, the stock market did this. So I can tell you, from 1973 to 1974, the stock market lost about 49% of its value. Wow. Over that 2 years. Yeah. And interest rates, as you may remember, really skyrocketed over those 2 years, over that 2 year period. So that also means for people who are invested in bonds, that bonds lost an enormous amount of value. So as an investor, I guess that means you need to think about what could happen and prepare for it. It doesn't it doesn't mean that's going to happen, because it seems like what you just read, this is again based on what you just said, Karen, that Jay Powell said, 15 billion a month lower out of 120 billion. I think that's something along the lines of 16%. So they're going to be spending 16% less on buying treasury-backed securities, mortgage-backed securities and U.S. treasuries, but it's still a lot of money. They're still pouring in $105 billion a month into the economy to keep interest rates low. So it seems like he's trying to be really, really cautious. Right. What happened in the 70s was they didn't really, so nobody at the Fed had the backbone to do anything really, really tough until Paul Volcker came along. And Paul Volcker came along in the late 70s and just ratcheted interest rates way, way, way up. And it completely choked off our economy. And that's about the time when the economy bottomed, was 1981, 82. That's the time when, about the time when Reagan came into office. He was first elected in 1980. So he had been in office for 1 to 2 years when it bottomed, and things started getting better, because that's the natural economic cycle. So back to what you should do today. Am I saying sell all your stocks or sell your real estate or sell your bonds? Absolutely not. One of the quickest ways to destroy your wealth is to make a mistake about what you're doing with your investments, like selling when you should be holding or buying when you should be selling. And this is something that is really a very important message to people, because it seems very simple and intuitive. If I'm a stockholder and interest rates are going up, and in the 70s they lost 50% of their value, I should sell all my stocks. And the truth is, the track record shows that when people do that, they end up timing it poorly. They time it wrong. Not only do you have to get the timing right when you sell, but you also have to get the timing right when you buy back in. And because the stock market is a forward-looking discounting mechanism, and I'll define that if you need me to, but because it's always looking forward, basically, by the time you think it's time to do something, it's already done.
Right.
It's already priced into the market. So if you do something early and you made the wrong decision, like right now, you decide to sell all your stocks. Well, what if there's nothing wrong that's going to happen? What if stocks continue to go up?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what's going to happen. You're going to say, well, I guess I better buy back in at a much higher price.
Right.
That's exactly how you destroy your wealth. That's exactly how you hurt yourself.
Right.
Remember I said in a previous video that Fidelity released some data that showed that the average investor only gains or benefits about 5% per year from stock ownership, compared to the market giving 10% on average. It's exactly because of this. Because people say, interest rates are going up, in the 70s, stocks went down, I'm going to sell all my stocks.
Yeah.
So making decisions and taking actions like that are exactly what stops you from benefiting from what the stock market gives you. Does that make sense?
It does.
It's about fear. This one's about fear, right? Interest rates are high. I'm sorry, stock markets are high. Bond markets are high. I need to sell now because I'm going to lose everything. And that's fear. And when you make decisions based on fear, you end up really hurting yourself. That's what history shows. People make really, really poor decisions. And also, let me just say that that kind of analysis is very, very elementary, let's call it. And that's not how you make money in the stock market. If you made money in the stock market by elementary thinking, everyone would be a millionaire.
Sure, right. So at this point, it sounds like if you've got, especially if you have a good amount of money in the market, most likely you're going to be working with somebody, an advisor of some sort, and that it would be time to have that discussion, because it's not just all or nothing. It's not just don't panic, sell, but maybe based upon trends, maybe they would recommend some changes, maybe divesting differently or different funding groups based upon what they see coming. That type of advice may come. Would you say that might be what it is? If you have specific stock, I guess specific stock that you have amassed in a certain organization, I guess depending upon the company, they may advise you differently based on that specific thing as opposed to mutual funds and such. But the bottom line is, no matter what, just don't get out. History says don't get out, because in the long run, over a 10-year period, the average is still 10. Even if it lost 49% during 73 and 74, for example, still historically it says no matter what year you start, I believe there may be an exception or two to this, JR, but from year one, 10 years later, it is on average, you've made money. You've made money by sticking.
So I loved a couple things you said there, Todd. One is what you just said, that's correct. It's important for people to understand that the 10-year gain per year doesn't happen every year.
Right.
Some years there are losses.
Right.
But overall, it averages out to 10. So that's why I said you destroy wealth by making bad decisions and doing things bad timing, right?
Yeah.
Timing these decisions poorly. The second thing is, this is just an additional thought on my part, is that advisors are going to be really careful about what they say to you, because nobody knows. Nobody knows how this is going to play out. nobody knew in the early 70s that stocks were going to go down 49%. Otherwise, everyone would have gotten out and gotten back in 1974, right? It's not the way it works. And so today, no advisor is really going to go. If you talk to 10 different advisors who really are very successful and know what they're doing, they're all going to give you different advice right now.
Yeah.
5 of them, I'm going to guess, 5 of them are going to say, yep, it's time to be cautious. The other 5 are going to say, no, the Fed has got this. They're handling it very well. There's nothing to be afraid of. This market is going higher because we're still putting $105 billion per month into mortgage-backed securities and treasuries, and interest rates are still 0. So why are you afraid? What are you afraid of? This is good for the market. So nobody knows is the bottom line. That's where this nobody knows can be a scary thing to think about, but it's the truth. Nobody knows what's going to happen. So what you have to do is look at history and continue to take actions that are consistent with people who've built wealth over history. Yeah. And so the other thing, Todd, that I mentioned, you said 2 things that I love. The other thing that you said that I love was it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Yeah. If you get scared, let's say you have all of your net worth, let's say you're worth $5 million and all $5 million are in stocks. Well, maybe it's time to take a little off the table. Maybe it's not a bad idea for you to sell some of it and keep some dry powder. So I can tell you personally, I have always kept a couple of $1 million in cash. So for cash, that means in either mutual funds or in US treasuries. And right now, those are paying less than 1%. So I've actually been losing money by holding all that cash. But the reason that I do hold all that cash is because if something happens that's unexpected, if housing prices should collapse, I'm probably going to be buying some real estate. If stock market prices should collapse, I'm probably going to be buying some very high quality companies at some very discounted prices. So that's something that is a strategy for people longer term, is to get to the position where not only do you have your real estate investments and your stock investments, but you also have what Wall Street refers to as dry powder, ready to employ when the situation is right. I'll tell you, everybody's a fan of Warren Buffett. I'll share with something with you that I read about him. He has in his office this story about some financial catastrophe. I don't know which one it is, but it was really, really bad. It might have been the collapse of the stock market in the 20s and the depression was all in the 30s. And he keeps it there as a reminder that nobody knows what's going to happen. Or I think, as the way he says it, is anything can happen. So you have to be prepared for all possibilities. So there are people who think right now that with what the Fed is doing, slowing down their purchasing, that they're calling tapering, that the stock market is going to respond positively, and it's going to go up. Absolutely. So, I talked about inflation and, this fear of a crash. We're near all-time highs. There are a lot of very, very smart analysts that think this market is going to welcome a tapering. Because there are a lot of people on Wall Street who believe that the Fed has been too aggressive in this buying program, because the United States has been chalking all that debt up onto its balance sheets, right? All the buying is money that we're printing. And so there are analysts that say we need to slow that down and we need to stop it because we have too much debt here in the United States. So there's a positive side to slowing this down.
Exactly.
Do you get a feel for how complicated this is?
Sure.
It's like a equilibrium that the Fed is trying to find with the economy and inflation and interest rates, and what about, the dollar is the reserve currency for the world, but that could be jeopardized if we have too much debt. I mean, it is a very, very complex situation. And that, to me, that's exactly why no one knows what's going to happen. Or as Buffett says, anything can happen. What happens in the middle? What happens in the middle of all this complex balancing act if North Korea fires a missile and it hits Los Angeles?
Right. Sure. Yeah. Everything, yes, changes. Exactly.
Everything changes. And can anybody know that other than Kim Jong-un of
Right.
North Korea? Probably not
Right.
too many people are going to know that.
Right.
That it's going to happen, right? So anything can happen.
And it seems like, as with other things, but you think of money as being such a tangible thing, but it really is kind of this living, breathing entity of sorts. And two people look at the exact same data and can come up with two completely opposite opinions as to what is going to happen next. So
Exactly right.
it makes it tough, but there is historical data to use to base your decisions on, or your financial advisor's decisions on. And I think the takeaway, if we were going to wrap things up now, for this session, would be to know that, number one, don't panic. Number two, I would say that as much weight was put up upon this announcement that was made today by the feds, in some ways, I feel like there could be a sense of relief, and that the steps that they took, as you mentioned earlier, baby steps, let's just test the water. And also it's flexible. We're not even really committing to fully doing this, and they'll kind of test out the reaction and see what's going on in the market, and that, that it's not gloom and doom like some folks were saying. Oh, when this announcement comes out, the market's just gonna bottom out. It's gonna be,
Let me add one more item to what you're saying, Todd, because what you're saying is right on, and that's the fact that the Fed has been talking about this for months and months. They've been talking about tapering. As I mentioned, in 2016, they actually tried to do it. They cut back, and the market had a negative reaction. Well, this time they've been talking about doing it, and the term they were using was thinking about tapering.
Right. Yeah.
So that's why, people who don't usually follow the Wall Street Journal or what's happening on Wall Street, everyday people are familiar with the concept of tapering and slowing down the purchases, because they've been talking about it for months. So as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the stock market is a forward-looking discounting mechanism. It knows that the Fed's been talking about this, and it's been waiting for, okay, you've been talking about this for a long time. When are you going to do it?
Yeah,
exactly.
So in a sense, there would be a sense of relief. Like, okay, finally, they're doing what they said they were going to do. That's probably a good thing.
Yes.
It means that things are, better. The job market is better. Things are moving better. Or, in this case, maybe inflation is getting a little worrisome, so we need to take steps, and they're doing it. But there's probably so there are definitely people who believe that it's a good thing that they're actually taking a step instead of talking about it more.
Right.
I think so. And it looks really good. We are prepared to speed up or slow down the pace of reductions. This is from Powell, in asset purchases if it's warranted by changes in the economic outlook. If we feel something like that is happening, we will be very transparent. So
he's talking about, that's exactly what you said when you said 15 and it's going to be variable. I think that's the word you used.
Yes.
That's exactly what he was talking about. That we're going to look at data, and we're going to try to do the right thing. We're going to try to give the right amount of medicine.
Exactly. And what brings me comfort is they don't want to fail, because if they fail, we fail, and then the whole thing falls apart. So there's no, this doesn't suit anybody for it not to work, is I guess my point. And I was just looking at the market, and it's like up and down, up and down. But it's, it's so funny. I feel so fancy. I just looked at the market on my phone. Oh, wow. Oh,
you are fancy.
Yes.
But here is the bottom line for me, is that as I've been learning these amazing things from you, JR, it allows me to make smarter and better decisions. And like, I'm thinking, I need to continue to pay down my debt. We need to look at our house and see where we're at with our, because I'm being that wife, I'm going to have to ask my husband what our interest rate is. He does pay that bill. I pay some, we sort of share those things, but we need to look at what we're doing. And it's that constant reevaluation of where we're at and then
Mhm.
what we can do better, and then
Mhm.
just keep plugging and keep staying in the game,
Yeah.
I think is the way to make it work as a person who's doing the regular stuff with regular money. And
I love that. I
we
love that.
think in the
And keep
hundreds.
learning.
Yeah,
Right.
I always look at these numbers and I see these huge numbers, and I'm like, it's okay, because my version, I'm thinking in the hundreds and then hopefully in the thousands as I save and pay off and purchase and whatever, but that I'm keeping that ball rolling in a smart way,
Right.
So I love that, Karen. And I don't think I've ever talked to you and Todd about this before, but sometime I think maybe we'll think about making an episode where I talk about my journey, my financial journey, because
Hmm.
I did start with nothing. And
Yeah.
I did, you're talking about you're dealing with hundreds, and hopefully you'll deal with thousands, and then it gets to tens of thousands and hundreds
Right.
of thousands, right? I went through all of that. And
Yeah.
so it's an interesting story, and it could be very inspirational. So we should
Yes.
think about doing an episode based on that.
I would love that.
That'd be
I
great.
would love that. What an informative and incredibly timely
Yes.
episode this is.
Great. So
Awesome.
friends, if you have enjoyed this episode, we please invite you to like this video, and especially if you know someone else who might benefit from the content that we've been talking about, please feel free to share it on all the platforms. It really helps our algorithms. It helps get the video out there, and we would appreciate that. Todd, Karen, anything to add to that?
No, this is great. I mean, we are on it. We were talking about things that were happening in this moment, which was
In the
kind of
moment.
exciting.
Thanks
I
to
love
Karen.
that. I'm like
Yeah.
updating the page, and I felt so
Yeah,
fancy.
that's good. That's
But
good.
listen, and remember, friends, I mean, this even made me have 1,000 more questions. And so if you have questions, put them in the comments. You can DM us. I'm going to write how you can reach us, and let us know what you're thinking about and what kinds of things we can help you with, so that we can better talk about this stuff, because that's the whole game. Is instead of being afraid of talking about money, let's bring
Right.
it out to the forefront.
Yes.
Let's talk about it and improve ourselves, which then improves our family. It becomes generational. Ugh, it makes
Amen, sister.
right?
Yep,
It
that's
makes me
right.
feel happy, that I have now done better than my parents. I pray my child will learn to do better than Dennis and I, and so on, so on.
Exactly.
So these are important
Exactly.
things.
Wonderful points, Karen. Thank you all for watching, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.